Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Isabella Robbins. I'm a fourth-year PhD student in the History of Art and American Studies Department at Yale. It's my pleasure to introduce you all to this afternoon's breakout session speaker, Dr. Tommy Rock. Dr. Tommy Rock is a member of the Navajo Nation from Monument Valley, Utah. He received his bachelor's degree from Arizona State University in Environmental Geography and Recreational Management in 2002. Then he received a master's degree from Northern Arizona University in 2008. After that, he worked for numerous organizations, including at the University of New Mexico for 2 years as a research scientist under Johnny Lewis, and was involved in the Diné project with the National Institute of Environmental Health Supplement Grant and also worked with the Navajo Nation Environmental Protection Agency Public Water Systems Supervision Program. He then pursued a doctoral degree from Northern Arizona University, where he received his PhD in Earth Science and Environmental Sustainability in 2017. Dr. Rock is interested in pursuing a multidisciplinary approach to solving complicated issues such as sustainability in the Southwest from a Native American perspective. With a PhD in Earth Science and Environmental Sustainability, he aims to integrate health, environmental, and cultural problems related to uranium mining into more informed decision-making on tribal lands. Being Navajo and from an area that is heavily mined has given him a very personal interest in these issues. Many of his relatives were involved in uranium mining, and even to this day, he and his family are still impacted by past uranium mining and milling, particularly as it pertains to their health. Dr. Rock believes that as an Indigenous person from the Navajo Nation, addressing the uranium contamination should reflect the Navajo culture, meaning that any developed policies would be most effective if they engage the Navajo fundamental laws and traditional ecological knowledge. Integrating these concepts is critical to Dr. Rock's studies and research. Specifically, he has been supported by the Diné Association and is working with them to ensure that our traditional teachings are not overexposed. After completing his doctoral program, Dr. Rock did postdoctoral research at the University of Utah at the Rocky Mountain Center for Occupational and Environmental Health, including a pilot study with some northern tribes in Wyoming, South and North Dakota. Currently, he is a Princeton University Presidential Postdoctoral Research Fellow in the Department of Geosciences and is involved in research on uranium and oil and gas fields in southern Utah and the Chaco Canyon area. Today, Dr. Rock will be presenting exposures, extraction, environmental racism, and relationships to contaminated land on the Navajo Nation. This presentation is co-presented as part of the it's co-presented with the Yale University Art Gallery in conjunction with the exhibition currently on view, Fazal Sheikh Exposures, which explores these themes in the American Southwest and in the Negev Desert. Dr. Rock was also a collaborator of Fazal Sheikh's and specifically helped with some of the methane research documented in the exhibition. Like I said, that exhibition is currently up. Myself and my supervisor, Judy Dittner, helped organize that and are very grateful to have Tommy here to show us more about this work and share it all with you as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Tommy, and he's going to talk for about 40 minutes, and then afterwards we can do a Q&A or have a conversation, whatever feels right. But thank you, Tommy.
Thank you. There you go. I'm doing developers. Yeah, I know Katie. I just want to introduce myself in Navajo for all the audience that are viewing. And I am from Monument Valley, Utah, and that's Monument Valley. That's the movie for me there, and that's my back in the back of that. What you see there is Cane Valley, and a lot of uranium mining has happened back there. One of the oldest mining sites called Monument 2 is back there, which I will touch on it briefly and later in the presentation. That was all the way from 1918 and still has not been remediated. And thank you for coming on a Friday afternoon. Well, what really got me interested in this research and this topic has to do with my grandparents. My grandmother, my late grandmother, she passed away at 106 years old, and my grandfather, a former World War II vet in the Army, and afterwards he was a uranium miner. One of the places that he worked at is the picture on the right-hand corner, which you can't really see at the moment, but it's called Moonlight Mine. There's a big old rock that was blocking the entrance with one of the mine entrances. That's an open pit mine about 100 feet wide and deep. And underneath that rock was one of his colleagues. There were three of them that were walking out. Both my grandfather and the guy in front of him walked out, but the guy behind him was crushed to death by that big boulder that fell and blocked the entrance to that. And from that day forward, they stopped working at that particular mine site, and everybody went home and never went back to work. And turned out to be that person's grave as well. And I'll talk a little about the geology, where the minerals come from in my neck of the woods, Monument Valley area. Touch a little bit on the policy related to uranium, uranium milling, the Superfund, and talk a little bit about the pathway exposure, not only to uranium mining, but the oil and gas industry as well. And talk a little about some of the case studies, and go a little bit more in depth with the uranium mining, oil and gas and fracking, and water contamination, some of the water related work that I'm doing that will address some of the water issues that we're facing on our nation. In conclusion, some of the policy with traditional ecological knowledge that I'll bring up later in the presentation. And first of all, a lot of the stuff with starting with manifest destiny, a lot of tribes being pushed from the East Coast to the Midwest and all the way to the West Coast. And from there, there's the Belzac, where a lot of the children were forced to learn English, being assimilated forcibly. A lot of those forced assimilation were military style, which you're beginning to hear a lot about, especially up in Canada. There's finding a lot of kids that are buried, and it's happening in this country as well. So some of that are being slowly being publicized. And then there's the Indian Reorganization Act. This act helped establish our tribal government, but it also helped a relationship with the federal government in terms of mineral extraction, as you'll see later in the presentation about royalties and not just uranium mining, but coal and oil and gas and what have you as well. So which is still happening to this day as well. And there's 574 federally recognized tribe, and there's 63 state recognized tribe, which both of them differ in different ways. A lot of the federally recognized got a lot of federal funding versus the state, which has some state funding, not a lot of federal funding. And the preliminary power retained by U.S. Congress, which they can choose to remove some of the tribe that are federally recognized, which has happened in the past administration under the Trump administration. And for my tribe, my tribe is pretty big. That's 25,000 square miles. And in order to function wholly, it's like it came up with 110 chapters. And all you see the polygon on the left hand side, those are chapters. They're like county boundaries, and chapter house, which meets monthly. They're like townhouse meetings that happens every month, and they talk about what's facing them locally, regionally, and the tribe as a whole. And to break that down even more, they came up with agencies. So we have 5 agencies. So each of these agencies where the chapters are located, they come together on a quarterly basis where they talk specifically on some of the regional issues that's facing them as well. So that's how it breaks down. And for doing this type of research, or environmental health research, human research related to environmental disclosure, there's a couple of steps you have to take. First, you get the community support, and you get a chapter resolution, get the people, get the community, get the chapter behind you, and get that support. And then you go on to the Western agency or one of the agency, depending on where you're working with. Sometimes there may be several agencies. You go to this agency and get support from there as well. And for a lot of stuff that I do, I have to go through my travel regulators and to inform them of what's going on. And any research that I'm doing, the data that I collect, I share that data, not only with the tribal regulatory agency, but also with the community and the chapter that I'm working with as well. So they know what's going on in the environment as well. And then if it's a health study, I go through another step called the health board, and I get their permission to do a study. From there, I go to the nomination Human Research Review Board, now IRB, and then go through that process. And once they get approved from there, then I can do the research, which this whole step, going through the Navajo Human Research Review Board may sometimes take about a year just to go through all of that thing. And a lot of traveling required going to the community, the chapters, the Western agency, the health board. And yeah, it takes quite a bit to actually finally to do the research. Should get some sort of certificate as I go through that, right? And for this topic about environmental exposure, just to give you an idea. Some of the hard rock mining that's happening in the Western states, and all the little polygons that you can see, these are for tribal reservations, and all the dark red areas are hard rock mining, not only uranium mining, but silver, iron, or what have you. So a lot of those are located near tribal reservations. And with tribes, in terms of health disparity, there's quite a bit compared to the regular US population. For example, with infectious disease, 40 to 60% higher than all races in the US. Diabetes is a big problem as well. Birth defects as well. So there's a lot of health disparities. And when it comes to uranium mining, as you see in some of the titles, there's quite a bit of uranium exposure that's happening. The thing is, in a lot of the native population or communities and reservations in the Western state, not only on the Navajo Nation, but New Mexico, Utah, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, some of those reservations are facing the same problem as we're facing on the Navajo Nation. So it's not a tribal issue for Navajo Nation, but it's a broader issue on a lot of tribal reservations that a lot of people don't know about. So I'm glad to be here so I can go and talk about this and share some of that knowledge with you all. And in terms of where the uranium mines are located, this is my research site. The 3 dust collectors there, and that's the mine. There's a different type of ore. That's a uraninite, carnotite mine, and where they were found is like in the geology wise. There used to be a river going from Texas going over to the state of Washington. And there were tributaries flowing to that river, and where those past rivers are, that's where the minerals are. Timeline wise, geology wise, it's like early Triassic period. And that's where they found. And that's true. And the Mongolian formation, they're between that layer, that's where the uranium or the uranium ore found. The thing is, I'm talking a lot about uranium, but when you look at that ore, it's not just uranium there, because there's uranium, there's vanadium, there's thorium, and there's vanadium, all combined in that one piece of ore as well. On top of that, it's there's radiation that's giving off, there's alpha, beta, and gamma radiation that's coming off that as well. And when it comes to uranium mining, there's a place where there's uranium milling as well, and there are 4 sites on the nomination where there are past uranium mining. These sites are Superfund sites under the Department of Energy, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and US EPA. And one of them is near Miami Valley, another one is in Cuba City, Rare Metals, and another place is in Shiprock, New Mexico, and the last one is over in New Mexico, or Shiprock, New Mexico. And timeline-wise, a lot of the uranium mining started in the 1940s, but it actually goes a lot further back than that. Started from the 1918, 1920s, when people were mining vanadium. People were in the 4 corners mining and seeking vanadium ore, which is pretty big back then. So one of the sites was King Valley, mining 2, and there's some more around the 4 corners. From there, when people discover what uranium is, then the atomic bomb happened, and then the arms race happened in the 1950s. So people started pursuing uranium, and where they found vanadium in the past, that's where they found uranium as well. So a lot of the companies went back to those locations, started mining uranium. And another thing, a lot of people flocked to the 4 corners, and my tribal area is my reservation areas. Some of those ore are really close to the surface, so it was easy for them to mine them. So there's a lot of places that have quite a bit of open pit mines in the past, and some of the mines are near the layers in the geology. So there's a lot of shaft that goes inside the mesa, so you see a lot of that. And then there's other places that have a combination of both open pit mining and shaft going into a lot of these layers as well. And in the 1950s, radon was identified as a cancer agent in uranium miners. There's a health study that was done. They found that out. And in 1978, uranium methane radiation control act happened by the Department of Energy. Yes.
Doctor, we got a message from Zoom. Would you mind just holding the microphone?
Okay.
Thank you.
How's that?
Oh, are you sure it's on? Oh, yeah, it's good.
Okay. What was that? Oh, uranium melting radiation under the Department of Energy first happened. Then right afterward, Superfund Act happened. In 1979, the church rock spill happened, which is pretty significant timeline-wise, because that's one of the worst accident that happened related to nuclear that happened, and a lot of it was not informed publicly. Media-wise, a lot of the story was around the incident happening with 2 Mile Island that happened around that time. So a lot of media attention there, not a lot of attention with the spill that happened in Church Rock. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Church Rock spill later in the presentation as well. And in 1990, the radiation exposure compensation happened for all the past uranium miners. And around that time as well, the downwinders happened as well in relation to the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act. The downwinders are where past nuclear bombing testing happened, like in Nevada. And another location is the white sand that happened over in New Mexico as well. And in 2014, my tribe won a big settlement, a $2 billion settlement. 2 billion is a lot of money, but compared to the amount of uranium on my reservation, that's almost close to half. It'll cover close to half of the remediation that's going to happen on the Navajo reservation. So a lot of the cost has to go to the engineering, getting access to where those abandoned uranium mines are located. So getting all the heavy equipment to that location. So that's where a lot of the cost goes to. And tell you my work and my research. This is pretty significant, Return of Navajo Boy. This documentary film really focuses on Skyline uranium mine. And the stories about a family that live beneath Skyline. And there's a lady by the name of Judy Pasternak. She did a piece for LA Times. And there's a former congressman by the name of Henry Waxman from California. He read about what was happening on the Navajo Nation. And he got the federal agencies together to address the uranium contamination. This is back in around 2005 when they got the agency together and they came up with a 5-year plan. U.S. Department of Energy, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, US EPA came together, Indian Health Service and BIA as well, Bureau of Indian Affairs. And from 2008 to now, it's like 2022, there's been, to my knowledge, there's been only one remediation that has happened, which is Skyline. It's a temporary cleanup as well. So there's still a lot of mine that's out there as well. There's 524 abandoned uranium mines that's still out on my reservation. But compared to the Western US, there's about 15,000 abandoned uranium mines in the Western US compared to 524. For 524, those are mines combined together that makes up 524 mine. Individually, there's about 12,000 abandoned uranium mines. So there's some reframing that has happened. So which will make it less impactful. So compared to saying 12,000 abandoned uranium mines, saying to compared to 524, it's like 524 sounds a lot better, right? And again, talk a little about the pathway of exposure, oil, soil, and water. A lot of contamination happens through water contamination. Water is scarce in the Southwest and on my reservation. And there's a lack of water infrastructure on my reservation as well. So a lot of people go to springs, hand dug wells, windmills to get water. And a lot of those locations, those areas are not regulated, meaning they're not sampled on a monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. And so a lot of the folks that use those water sources don't know the water quality for a lot of those springs and wells and what have you. And for my first case study is like the environmental justice grant that we got with Tulane Lake Enterprise. The little project was called the Perkrow Little Colorado River Watershed, and worked with a friend of mine from Southwest Research Information Center. I'm Chris Shuey, and community collaborator, Janine Yazzie and Karen Collymore. They both operate, they have a nonprofit organization called Sixth World Solution. I still work with them. I still work with Tulane Enterprise on different projects as well. And I still collaborate with Chris Shuey on different projects as well. Chris Shuey has like over 30 years of experience in research related to uranium exposure with University of New Mexico. And as a matter of fact, he's part of a study called the birth cohort study, where they're seeing some of the uranium in infants. Like they're looking at women that are pregnant in areas that have past mining activity, and they're seeing uranium in babies. These are newborns. Only the mother's been exposed, not the kid. So they're seeing that. And one of the studies that I was involved with was a sheep study in Cameron. We saw the same thing in lambs, and we saw uraniums in the kidney and in the liver as well. So where the red polygons and squares are, and those are my research area. Oil and gas fields. The Paradox Basin is up in the Utah area. The San Juan Basin is down below and right in the middle. And my other studies in Sanders area. As you can see, there's no uranium mining or milling in that area. And a lot of the mining activity happened upstream in Church Rock, New Mexico, in that area, which is about 80 miles upstream from Sanders, the Perka River. And that's where the Church Rock spill happened back in 1979. There's past uranium mining and milling in that area as well. So with this project, this environmental justice project, we're looking at water quality along the Perka River. And since this was USEPA, like federal dollars, I have to go and write up a quality assurance plan. And the Region 9 quality assurance sign off on it. My tribe got signed off, and this is the document that tells you how to do the water sampling. And we hired 8 communities to go out into the field to do the sampling. And we did a 2-day citizen science training as well, so the community can participate in sampling as well and show them how this work is progressing. The first day was all on site. We did basic cartography, coordinates mapping, heavy metals, radionuclides, and all. Then the second day went out to the field and they did the sampling. So if they have any questions, they can come up to me and I can explain to them how we're sampling it and how to get a GPS coordinate as well. So we got the raw data, like the coordinates, put it on paper and actually put it in a format that's usable. So the community were involved with the whole step. That was really cool. In terms of where people would get water, it's like down below and the one on top. Those are one of the sites where people still get water and still being used to this day as well. For this project, we're looking at uranium, gross alpha, and radium. For a lot of people, or for a lot of the organization from academic, like a University of Mexico and other institutions, there's quite a bit of research looking at water quality. And a lot of the institutions, they do a lot of heavy metal. So not a lot of people do radionuclides at gross alpha or radium-226 or 228. In this study, we're able to do that, which was pretty awesome. When we did the studies, like we sampled in what's called Newlands area down below, Church Rock area, or Church Rock is up Cameron area, and a place called Blue Gap chapter. That area, I've seen some of the highest uranium level, also gross alpha and radium-226 and 228 as well. And when we put all the data together, and that's what we got, and we found out where the contamination was happening, which is along the Perka River. And my friend Chris Shuey made this slide. The data is coming from Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. And we see that in 2003, there was exceedance in uranium in the public water. Anytime there's exceedant, there's supposed to be a public notice to the people that are using that water, the public water. But in this case, nothing happened. There was no advisory, nothing that went out to the public to warn the people about that. As you can see, from 2003 to 2015, there's been quite a bit of exceedances, and the community of Sanders were suspicious, but they had no one to help them until like we came along and we sampled the water. We sampled the public water in Sanders, and we sampled the elementary and middle school water, and it showed that the uranium in those areas and those schools were elevated as well. And the elementary school, or the school, elementary middle schools on top, and down below is the community of Sanders. And for the wellhead, for the public water for Sanders, that's it. Just a barbed wire was keeping the door closed, basically. And both of the wells were tapped into the same aquifer as well. I remember in one of the meetings, there was a representative from Navajo Tribal Utility Authority that came, and they were saying that they can get water from my reservation from Newlands into Sanders, but there wasn't enough pressure to provide water for both of them, for the Sanders community and the elementary and middle school. So the person from there told the community to make a decision, either the Sanders can get the water or the school get the water. And a lot of people just broke down and started crying. And this is a public notice from Arizona Department of Health. It just basically says like the water is fine, but people that have health issues don't drink it as much. And yeah, it's just very upsetting. And when the folks from Arizona Department of Health came up from Phoenix, the community heard their presentation, and the communities were mad, and they basically made both of them cry. And the community set up a GoFundMe page, and they continued to buy bottled water until they got new water. The outcome of this, the Sanders Homeowner Association happened, and that's where they became more informed of uranium exposure as well. The elementary and middle school got new water, or a water filtration system. And my tribe, Navajo Nation Tribal Utility Authority, took over the public water and also the regulatory responsibility for that area, even though it's off the reservation. And in this case, empower the community as well. And for the next step for that area is to look at to find out where the groundwater contamination is happening, is what's causing it. And my theory is, or my hypothesis is that it's coming from the past uranium mining and milling and the spill that happened over in Church Rock. So one of the things that I'm doing in Princeton is to look at lead isotope and do a lead isotope fingerprinting with the uranium ore from Church Rock, and looking at the water in Sanders and see if they match up. And if it is, then you're gonna reverse. If it's not, then it's like, all right, stop there, where it's coming from. That's the current research that I'm working on at the moment. Also, let me explain a little bit more about this this map. This map shows you different pathway of exposure as well from uranium, and all the triangle areas, the dark areas, those are uranium mines. All the circle are the contaminated water springs or unregulated water sources. The darker the color, the more pathway exposures happen, meaning that people are getting supplies from these past uranium mills, abandoned mines, and building homes from it, like building the foundation to build homes, building horse corrals, sheep corrals, or what have you from these areas. And that's what this map is showing. And where all the white colors are, that's an area that's not happening. And this map is showing you skyline. I have like 3 dust collector, one near this, one in that area, and one near one of the houses. And the reason why I'm doing this is because the folks that live in that area, they're asking, there might be uranium dust coming down, even though this is a cell. And this area has been remediated, but since there's some uranium ore near the edge, it's really steep, about, I say, between 80 to 75 degrees, really steep. And anytime there's sand or any dirt on the sandstone, it becomes very slippery. It became really dangerous for the workers in that area. So they didn't go near the edge just for safety reasons. It's about 90 to 80 feet drop down below. So there's still some of the uranium dust near the edge. So that's the reason why I'm doing the study and see if it's true. And I am from that community. So Oljetua grew up in that community. There's a uranium mine in that area. And down below is like a lot of uranium ore down below. As a little kid, we used to go up there and explore a lot of the mines. And the only warning that we got is it's dangerous. But as a kid, it's like you're curious, go up there, check that out. And that's what we did. There's no sign. At the time, there was no warning sign. And people were not informed enough to know the type of danger related to that. Now I know, and now I think a lot more people know. There's still a lot of public education that's still happening. So there's still a lot of stuff that's going related to public information and outreach. This is Monument 2. This is one of the longest mines. It's about a mile long. This whole area was uranium mining. And these are 2 washes, north and south. And there are uranium ore in both of these washes. And I've seen some of the ore downstream as well. And that's Monument 2. This is a location, it's like the one I was telling you about, started with vanadium mining, 1918. And that is Moonlight Mine. And talk a little about Paradox and San Juan Basin, doing some of the air quality research to oil and gas in that area of the reservation. And the same thing on the New Mexico side, the San Juan Basin, looking at air quality related to oil and gas. And there's quite a bit of methane gas as well in those 2 locations. So over in Princeton, they have a mobile lab that collects methane gas. And I'm working with a professor, researcher there, Mark Zangalo. And I'm gonna learn how to separate the methane from other gases. So I will know like the type of gases being emitted from those areas, which will also help the community and my tribe as well. And for the Paradox Basin, that is a test well that the oil company were looking for oil, and that is producing water. There's also oil in the water as well. So you can see like a little slick of oil on top. And that is being used for irrigation, and livestock are using that as a drinking source as well. And that's oil, we're pumping oil. And that's what it looks like. That's the same picture down below. And during the winter months, you can actually see the inversion happen, meaning like a lot of the gas will drop down below and people will have more frequent headaches and other respiratory issues around that time as well. So plan to go back out in January and do some more sampling, get a better idea of what's going on in that area and in terms of air quality. And for drinking water, looking at the Safe Drinking Water Act is a lot more related to population density. And for my tribe, there's a lot of people that live away from bigger communities. A lot of them are working on preserving their oral tradition, so they don't have access to potable water. So one of the alternative ideas to use what's there, some of the springs that's already there. And well, let me explain a little about regulated waters. Like there are regulated watering areas and unregulated water, or those people go to regulated water, even though there are regulated watering points during summer months. Some of those public waters infrastructure gets pretty stressed, so they turn off a lot of these regulated watering points. And again, people go back to using those unregulated water sources. And that just shows you where some of the regulated watering points are. And my idea is to use some of the springs. This is what I'm working on at the moment, and go back out next week and work on this a little bit more. This is inside Monument Valley Tribal Park. The people in this community, they've been asking for water. They went to my tribal government and they went to the chapter, tried to ask for help, but nothing happened. And had this idea of using spring, and so far it's working. And hopefully get some of the more look at ways to address a lot of the potable water in other communities as well by doing some more work like that. The other is water harvesting. And I like this project working with Talina Lake Enterprise. This area is Black Falls. Back in 2011, 2010, 2012, around that area, around that time, USCPA from Region 9 and my tribal regulatory folks, they had some money to drill for a aquifer to provide for this community. Black Falls, there's no water infrastructure there. There's they have some springs, but all of those springs are elevated in uranium and arsenic. So that community they've been talking a lot about ways to get water to a lot of these communities. A lot of the elders live in that area. So my tribal regulatory folk in UCPA, they drilled for some wells, they got water, they hit aquifer, the coking unit aquifer, but the coking unit aquifer in that area is too salty, so it was unusable. And about 2 years ago, when the pandemic was happening, we got some funding, or last year actually, we got some funding from the tribe, and we were able to drill 4 wells, and those wells that we hit, we did get water, and the water was good, and the people, we informed the community that the water was good, and a lot of people were happy, they were crying. It's like, yeah, we were able to do something that the federal and tribal regulators weren't able to do. So hey, yeah, it's like, I was really happy about that. Gets me all motivated, and it's like, makes me happy. And currently that's inside Monument Valley Tribal Park, and I had a community meeting, and we talked about put in these springs, and that's one of the springs. This is Sand Springs, and the community there are hauling water. And areas that had past mining, when there's water contamination, you see a lot of those signs. It's like that tells people not to drink water from that location. And I'll make this real quick due to time. Traditional ecological knowledge. There's Nova Nation, we have fundamental laws, and I'm using these laws to help address some of the policies. And I do work with a lot of the medicine men and women, and making sure that some of the policies that that I'm working on, or that's there's like that can be used by the tribe where there's no traditional or cultural conflicts. And a lot of stuff that I talked about is related to risk assessment, and risk communication, and risk management. There's on this side is a lot of the Western ideas. On the other side is the holistic approach. On the Western side is like just basically looking at water and just focusing on water. But on the holistic side, it talks about the whole environment as a whole of how water is being used, the plants, the animals, and also about the plant we use in ceremonies, the plant that we use for medicine, and the animals that eat the plant, and the animals that we eat as well. So it's like a big food web. My findings and questions. Oh, must have did a good job.
You have one.
We have one question from the Zoom chat.
Right.
So on Zoom, I believe it's Edith Pastana asked, what efforts / enforcement are occurring to remediate these abandoned mines? How is the Bureau of Land Mines addressing and closing these mines properly?
Well, in terms of policy wise, around abandoned uranium, there's no policy related to that. But Superfund law is being used to address the abandoned uranium mines, and a lot of that they have to modify the Superfund law to make it applicable on the Navajo reservation because it's rural and it doesn't have a lot of population density. And they're focusing more on communities where there's abandoned uranium mines. So anytime there's like an area that has 10 times more the background level, I believe is like 30 acres. And anything that's beyond that or 10 times more than that is like considered 10 times the background level. And in those areas, like they'll put it as an area that's an area of concern, so they'll focus on cleaning those areas up. And again, it's like the funding that my tribe won was $2 billion. It's not enough to make all of these mines, but they're targeting certain mines at the moment, and it's still an ongoing process at the moment to try to look for ways to address a lot of these abandoned mines that are not going to be remediated with that $2 billion as well. So it's still an ongoing process. And what was the other question?
The second part of the question is, how is the Bureau of Land Mines addressing and closing these mines properly?
They're doing a lot of reclamation, meaning they're removing a lot of the physical hazards, like the physical hazard, like the entrance to a mine. They're closing the entrance to a lot of these mines. If there's an open pit, they're backfilling a lot of those open pit mines, they're pretty radioactive mine waste on the bottom and then backfill them up. As you can see in one of the slides, see, like good example is this Moonlight mine. It's like it's background level again. And for this area, the Moonlight mine, they remove a lot of the physical hazard, meaning they close the entrance and backfill some of the area, but a lot of the mine waste is still in the washes. And there are people that still living in that area as well, and they have livestock in the area as well. So in that way, abandoned mining lands is addressing it that way. But in terms of the bigger picture in the Western US, there's no law at the moment that will address the abandoned uranium mines. And there should be, because there's a lot of them out there still that are not being addressed. The mine that I'm talking about is just specifically for the Navajo Nation. So there's other mines that are still out there, like there's a mine that's idling at the moment near the south rim of the Grand Canyon called Canyon Mine. I think they're still going by the name of Canyon Mine. I don't know. I heard they changed it, but I don't know what the name of it, if that's true. And there's still quite a bit of abandoned uranium mines in Bears Ears as well. That I didn't bring up as well. There's a lot more mine in the state of Utah, Colorado as well. I believe Wyoming and North and South Dakota. Actually, all the Western states that have mines, like even in Nevada and California as well. So there's still a lot out there that I didn't touch on or talk about. And I know there's a lot of tribes that have concerns related to this topic as well. So I think a good solution will be to start having these dialogues about policies around abandoned uranium mine and remediating those abandoned mines as well.
So I know you guys are about air testing, the water and the soil. Is there any governing body, state or national that's going out there and doing the same work? And is there any organization that's kind of to address this problem, like trying to create policies and legislation?
There's a grassroots organization from Black Hills, Protectors of Black Hills, I think it's called. It's a Sioux tribe, Lakota organization that are trying to have that policy move forward in Congress. I don't know where it's at the moment, but I know they're trying to address that. And in terms of people working to address this, I know a lot of the work is coming from Native grassroots organizations that are trying to address that as well. So it's not just my tribe. There are tribal members from Pueblo that's working on that. Some are working on that. They have some Sioux tribal members, grassroots organization that are working on that as well. And there's probably more out there that are working on the same issue as well, but a lot of the work is coming from the grassroots organization.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm from Albuquerque, actually, originally, so this is a really important issue to me, and I've seen a lot of it in the New Mexico side, and I feel like something that individuals really struggle with in activism, or individuals that are experiencing issues with nuclear waste, is just not feeling empowered to talk about the issue because it's so technical and it's so scientific, and experts can also often use jargon to make people feel, a little bit like they don't understand the problem. Do you feel like, it looks like you've done a lot with engaging the community, having them help in your research. Do you think that's helping them feel more empowered to bring up these issues, to advocate for their community? Can you talk a bit about that?
Oh yeah, this really helps. Like I'm fluent in Navajo as well. Even though I'm fluent in Navajo, it's like I prior to doing this type of research and getting the data, it's like I went to one of my tribal elders, and I got some help in interpreting a lot of the results as well. So in that way, I can engage a lot of the elders in the community as well, and having discussion related to this. And it really helped as well to bring awareness to a lot of the elders as well, and the people that have a hard time understanding the technical side when you put that in English. Does it help?
Yeah.
Your question?
I don't know if it, Mike, she. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Paul Guido from Art Associate. You talked a lot about uranium today, but you also early in your presentation, you referenced these other elements. There's not just uranium mines. And I was just thinking kind of about the electrification of fleets, the higher demand for batteries. And when you manufacture batteries here in the US, you want to reduce our dependence on certain rare earth elements from other parts of the world. I just can't help but think there are unintended consequences of renewed mining activity on Navajo lands and other tribal nations' lands. And we at the beginning of a whole other kind of wave of mining that's going to impact your communities in different ways.
Yeah. And I know with batteries, it has become an issue in Nevada for some of the tribal members in the area. I don't remember what they were mining. I don't know if it was lithium. I'm not sure, but I know it's like I believe it was Shoshone Paiute Nation in Nevada. They were battling some of the mining company related to that. And I haven't been really following that. So I know it's an issue. And that's the first thing that I thought of when you brought that
Gold,
up.
I think gold is one of those elements that's going to be back in vogue to help support battery production. So there's a bunch of other unique rare earth elements too. So I'm not sure Canadian what they are.
Thank you so much. Really learned so much from you. I was wondering, I have two questions. How is climate change and increased droughts impacting water contamination, uranium contamination in water? And then were you involved with the art exhibit exposure? And I was just wondering if you could talk more about that.
Yeah. Climate change and how it affects water quality. When there's a lack of rain, there's less dilution. And when that happens, the heavy metals, not only uranium, arsenic is a big issue in the Four Corners just because of the geology. So it becomes more concentrated. In that way, it contributes to the water quality. And your second questions, I did help Fazal go to some of the locations like the oil and gas field in Aneth and in Chaco Canyon area. Took some pictures. We had a person from Santa Fe come out and flew drones and got the gas leaking from those sites. So that was really cool to actually see that on video with a really fancy equipment, especially when it's flying around. It's like, I hope it doesn't drop.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Rock. My question is actually about exposures because I saw Fazal's talk a little bit and heard that there was an offering that was a part of the exhibit that was later denied. And I'm curious if in your work approaching things from a scientific lens, if you've experienced censorship or pushback in sort of, providing the details of what's happening.
Anytime that's stuff related to the culprit sites, I usually go to Diné Coffee Association, they're like medicine men and women that will tell me how to reframe it or say that I don't give away a lot of or cultural secrets. So in that way, like I'm able to reframe it or redress it or just touch on it just briefly. But in this case, like I don't really fully aware of what happened, and there's folks from the museum here that can do it and answer that question. So I want to hear when that happens. What took place.
I wanted to know a little bit more about the natural phenomenon of rock drainage and whether or not that adds a lot to the uranium problem, sort of on the geological level. And the second part of my question is whether or not the increased aridity of the continental center has played a great deal into the groundwater problem, or if, I know that's a big question, but I just wondered because the aridity seems to be increased in that region.
Your second question, I'm not too sure, but I can ask my mentor from Princeton because he's a geologist.
Sure.
And I can ask him that question and answer your question. So if I can get your contact info, is like I can go answer that question. And your first question about acid mine drainage, this area called Blue Gap Kachi area. There's a mine there called Mine Claim 2028. Of all the sampling that I've done, that's the only spring that I know of where the pH level is like 3.6, I think. So it goes into what we're talking about with acid mine drainage. And the uranium level for that particular spring is pretty high. It's like as you can see, it's like over 2,000. And that's the only one that I've seen so far that's that high. Which I'm happy there's only one that's like that I know of. I hope there's nothing like that elsewhere as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and thank you for the invitation. I'm happy to hear and talk about the subject and with all the audience up there. Able to educate the folk out there as well. So thank you. Thank you for coming.